Thank you both for joining us.
Great to be here.
We're going to start off with the Aged Care Royal Commission, which kicked off this week. Before that commission even started, Ken Wyatt, the Aged Care Minister, announced some new regulations to prevent the unlawful use of physical and chemical restraints. Does Labor support that?
Absolutely, although we have to ask the question, why did it take 5 years to come to this point? This is a government that had to be dragged kicking and screaming to the Royal Commission. This is a government led by a Prime Minister who cut $1.2 billion from aged care funding when he was Treasurer. This is a government that has 127,000 people waiting for aged care packages. I have one of the oldest electorates in the country. I welcome this Royal Commission. I welcome these new regulations. But on the eve of an election, I've got to be pretty cynical about the motives behind this government.
Craig, did it take too long for these sorts of rules to come into place? Because there have been several reports calling for this sort of regulation and there hadn't been a lot of action.
Oh, it's good to see Pat congratulating the government for a change. We've got the Royal Commission up and running. It's due to report mid-2020. And look, this is an issue that concerns many Australians. More of us are ageing. We've got a greater percentage of the population that will need aged care as we go ahead. It's important we look at it and we make sure we've got all the settings right.
This is a question for both of you. Pat, you talk about funding. Obviously, there are complex issues here, but would both of you, if you were in government, commit to more funding in this area? Money isn't the only answer, but it goes a long way.
Well, I'm not going to announce our policy at 9:15 on a Saturday morning, sadly, but I think it is incredible that this government has cut $1.2 billion, and we do have 127,000 people waiting for packages. I have people in tears in my office quite regularly trying to get a package for either themselves or a loved one. We have a sector in crisis. More absolutely needs to be done, and you would expect us to have something to say about that.
Craig, is more money the answer?
Oh, more money is part of the answer, yes. And this is the most important thing as we get into the election, whether it's for schools or for hospitals or whatever it is. The way we get more money into the system is to have a strong economy. Money doesn't come from, it doesn't grow on trees. It doesn't come from, we can't do it by running up big budget deficits as we have in the past. We've got to make sure that we're funding this in a sustainable way. And the best way to do that is to ensure that we have a strong economy going forward.
But Craig, we're going to have to wait such a long time for this Royal Commission to do the good work that it needs to do. Can we afford to wait that long? We're already seeing horror stories of dementia patients being beaten in their rooms and being neglected. What's going to happen in the interim? And doesn't the government need to step in?
You are absolutely right, and there's been some horror stories, and that's the reason why you need a Royal Commission. Unfortunately, we'd like to have a Royal Commission wrapped up very quickly, but it has to hear all the evidence, make the recommendations. In the meantime, if particular issues come up, I'm sure in a bipartisan way that we can act and we can fix those. We don't have, rather than wait until the full report.
Well, we have 127,000 Australians waiting for packages right now. The government has said they're entitled to that package, they qualify for the package, but the funding is not there. That's something that should be fixed without waiting for a Royal Commission, because those people are in dire need.